Good afternoon, everybody. Hans here from Topl. We're just getting set up here. We'll be ready to go in just a second to discuss Sigma protocols. Okay, there we go. All right, so in today's discussion, we're going to be talking about we'll be starting with an introduction, basically, to what are Sigma protocols, with a high level example. And then we'll start digging into details and maybe answering people's questions about how Sigma protocols fit in with what Topl's doing, how they work within our platform, and we'll go from there. So joining me today, we have the rest of our research team. James, you want to give a quick intro for yourself?
Hello, I'm James, and the co-founder and CTO at Topl. Aaron?
Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm the research director with Topl.
Okay. So at least for me, I know different people have different learning strategies, but for me, I find it's easier to start with a concrete example, and then we can go to sort of like the high level abstraction. So the sort of quintessential example that I'd like to start with here is using the discrete log problem to do like Schnorr signatures. So the idea behind Sigma protocols is you have two people who are interacting, and person A wants to prove that they have some knowledge of some secret value to person B without revealing the value to person B. And this characteristic, this sort of zero knowledge proof, is the core behind what Sigma protocols are doing. It's an interactive way of doing a zero knowledge proof that's relatively lightweight. So in the
Oh, I'm so sorry, Hans. My bad. I was trying to just set it up for later. I apologize.
no worries. If you wanna draw it as I'm talking,
No.
like
I wanted to
that's
draw
also
like
fine.
when we start doing the examples. That's what I was trying to set it up for.
I was just about to jump into the example.
Okay. No. Well, okay. I can start drawing if you wanna guide me through it.
Yes, I can guide you through it.
Okay,
so we've got two people, and they're interacting. We've got a prover and a verifier. Those are our two parties.
That doesn't work better.
So what is it about a Schnorr signature scheme that makes this a good example for starting out with Sigma protocols?
That's a great question. It was a good example for me because it's very straightforward. The discrete log problem is relatively well understood, and intuitively you can understand why the math composes very, very straightforwardly. So the way that you can check the proof, understanding how the proof is checked, I should say, is relatively intuitive to understand if you have an understanding of logarithms and algebra. So the go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, if I recall, like in this protocol, they have to agree to like the setup first, right? Like, before we do anything, they just agree to like the environment.
Yes. So, for example, they need to randomly generate some prime numbers. They need to agree on how they're going to generate those prime numbers, where they're going to draw them from.
Right. So this is is this the G, like you need the generator point and something else?
Yes. So there's some group, you need to agree on some group, which is I I don't necessarily want to start with like
Oh no, okay.
what is a group in terms of number theory.
No, that's
I think
what I'm
that would
trying to
be a
tell you.
little.
I just want the letters. Like, what are the letters that you give me from the environment?
Let's start with let's just start with G, generator point G.
Little g. So you give me little g. That's
Little
the only
G.
thing the environment gives me.
Let's start with that.
Okay, that's fine. I'm fine. Yeah. So
Yeah.
they agree on little g before anything, like
Yeah.
as a setup parameter, is just like a part of the construction of this protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. So that's step 0.
So now the prover has some secret value that they have, which is R, little r.
It's a little r.
Yeah.
So this is time t.
And
naught.
that's
Okay.
yeah.
This is time
And so
t
little r is the value that they want to prove to the verifier. So first they create what's called a commitment. So the commitment is a way of showing that they know something about little r without revealing little r. So the way that they do that is they create commitment t, which is equal to g raised to the r.
Okay. So you create the commit by making t. Sorry, I'll zoom in a little bit. So this is that time. I'm sorry. I know. I apologize. This is what happens in research: is you make really gross diagrams. So at time t1, they want to prove r, and so they create a commit. You said t, which is r or g to the little r, right?
G to the little r, correct.
So now you have a tuple of r and t, remembering that t is actually g of r, right?
Yeah.
And you send that to the
no
verifier?
you only send t. If you sent r, then you'd reveal your sequence.
Of course. I'm sorry. Yes. So then you take this part and you send this to the verifier. So you give them t, and that's all at time t1.
Yes.
Okay, so time t2.
Now at time t2, the verifier says, okay, I got your commitment t. I'm going to hold on to that. Let me send you a challenge. So they generate some random value, and they send that value c. So the challenge is c. So they generate a random value c, and they send that to the prover.
So at time t3.
Yeah. Then at time t3, the prover generates their response. So the response is equal to S, which is equal to R plus X times C.
X.
Yeah, we haven't introduced X yet, but it's part of the setup.
Okay. Okay, so you get S, which is R plus X times C. Okay. And then don't you do like G to the S or something?
Not yet. So they send S, the prover sends S back to the verifier.
Okay. So now the verifier has T and they have S. They have T, yes. S, and C.
Correct.
Okay.
And G and X.
Oh, and G and X. So can I
Okay.
take X? Okay.
Okay. Then, so the X and Y are related to like the generator curve. Anyway, and let's not. I don't
Special
want to.
mumbo
I don't want
jumbo.
to get bogged down on that.
Yeah, exactly. I know. Like modulo group, discrete, how we make the problem hard. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go.
So then the verifier takes G and raises it to S.
G to the S.
And they compare that with Y to the C.
Wait, where'd Y come from? So Y is also from the
It's
setup?
related to the X, like X and Y are points on the curve.
So I need to agree on the points. Like I get in the environment, do I have where do I agree on X and Y? Do they come from the setup or do they come from our back and forth?
Yes, I think they're agreed upon in the setup.
Yeah, I think I'm okay. Okay. So you're saying, but so like, yeah, X and Y would be somehow they're points in the group, but they're basically like G to the something is X, G to the something is Y, right? Is that how they're related? Or is it that G to the X is something and G to the Y is something?
It's more like, well, here let's switch back to my screen so you can see what I'm looking at here.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So this is the example that I'm working from here.
Oh,
so
I really want to.
You really want?
Do you have the lecture notes one? Do you have the lecture notes one? Okay.
This one.
Yeah. So let's go through this. Let's go through this first, and then I want to look at those.
Okay, fine. Let me zoom out. Here. So X and Y are in R.
This is too small for me to see. Sorry.
Okay, let me zoom in then.
No, yeah.
Is that better?
Well, I mean, it's okay. I can pull it up on mine. Oh, there's that. Oh,
I'm operating on a tiny window here.
One thing is that generate response in the prover side should be a Z, I think.
Yes, I think so.
It's a slight typo there. For the specific example for Schnorr's protocol, there's lecture 5 as well, which I think will clarify some of the variables that we were.
Yeah, what we're looking at here is sort of a generic case for any Sigma protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, can we look at the one for specific to the Schnorr?
Yeah, let me see. Do we have? I'm not sure that I have the link for that.
I do.
Let me try to just replace it in the URL.
Yep, oh yeah, that works.
That works too. There we go. Perfect.
Okay, here we go.
Man. Okay. Here, I'm gonna start over. Prover. Verifier. So they share X. What's the power? H is equal to G to the X.
Yeah.
Is that true? G to the, yeah, okay. So they have X, H, and G to the X. So that kind of implicitly assumes that they know G because they're able to compute H. Those are the only two things. Okay. Verifier. Oh, I guess. Okay, never mind. Only the prover knows X. They both know H, but only the prover knows X. Is that the way I should read that? It seems like that's the case.
Yeah, that seems possible.
Okay, let's assume that that's the way it goes. So the prover knows X and H, which is G to the X. And only the verifier knows
The
H,
verifier knows H.
which is G to the X. We assume they both know, and they both know G, because I'm just going to assume they both know G, because I'm pretty sure that's the case. So then T naught is R and U, which is equal to G to the R. And R is a number. What is this? See, I hate these symbols. What does this symbol mean? I can't read the symbol.
So here we've got little r is
Yeah.
drawn at random from Z in prime order Q.
Okay. I'm just going to say I pick R. Thank you for the detail, though. Is picked at random. What is the pick? Is it a star? What is that little symbol above?
It's an R. It's just a capital R.
Oh, it's a capital
over the
R.
arrow.
It's a capital R over the arrow? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
When you put it that way, it's perfectly logical. Okay, so then you transmit U, and then they hold on to U. Then they pick at random a C.
The challenge C.
The challenge, yeah. They send you the C.
Mm-hmm.
So we, I'm sorry. Did in the paragraph above, what is H? Is H also in Z sub Q?
H is a group element.
It is a group element. Okay. So then what is group Z of prime order Q? Like, is that just is that a different set than the set?
I'm pretty sure here they're using Z just to represent the integers. And Q maybe is the prime integers.
Okay. All right. And that's fine. I just want to make sure that they're different sets. Like I wish I had like typing on these numbers, right? Because sometimes you don't know if numbers are in the same domain. Or it's like hard for me to track which numbers belong to which domains when I read these things. But I know that R and C are at least in the same domain because they both come from Z sub Q. I know U is a group element, so U and H are in the same domain. I don't know what the domain of X is. Here, I really don't get what the script R thing is telling me. I really don't understand how to read that thing. Okay, anyway, I'm going to move on from the things I don't know and hope to learn them someday. So the challenge, then Z. So I compute Z. Not if I'm erasing stuff. Z is equal to R plus CX. X, something only I know. R is something I picked. C is something you
Which
gave
also is only something you know.
You're right. R and X are both things only the prover knows. Okay, so then I send back, and here's where the magic happens, right? Because now, due to the like, it really just like rules of exponentiation. That's the funniest part about all this stuff is we do all this like big old number things, and really it's just like basic math in the end.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of,
I think that's why honestly
math.
I think that's why this is sort of the canonical example.
Yeah. Okay. So we get G because they know the generator point, so they can do G to the Z. And their question or what they want to enforce is, does G to the Z equal U times H to the C? And why would that ever be the case? And that would be the case if we write everything out really pedantically. Because G to the Z would be G to the R plus CX. Come on. Plus CX. Do you want to... I'm like writing it all out. Do we want to like switch back to my screen for a second?
Sure.
And try and give myself more room on the iPad. Here we go. Doop. All right, so g to the z is g to the r plus x, which is equal to g to the r times g to the c times x. It's based, I think, as far as we can go. Then u h to the c is equal to u was g to the r h.
While you're writing that out, James, I'm just going to address some of the questions that we got from the chat.
Oh yeah.
So the first question is the commitment T the witness? To my understanding, no. The Z is sometimes referred to as the witness, I believe. So you feel free, Aaron and James, to correct me if I'm wrong. But the witness is sort of the evidence that you know the secret value. And then to clarify, question here we got from Sean, the T, so the commitment T is a different T from the time steps. So T0, T1, those are time, but T, the commitment, is a different T. It's an unrelated T. They just happen to both be T.
Yes, yeah. I was trying to like time order, like these things don't all happen simultaneously. We're going down time, or like we're going forward in time as I go down the page, basically.
Then we had one question from Liam. Why are Sigma protocols important? So we are going to get to that. I wanted to sort of explain what Sigma protocols are first before we get to that. But at a high level, they're just a very efficient way, a very nice and efficient, simple way of doing a zero knowledge proof. So how you can use a zero knowledge proof, that's what we'll get into later.
Yeah. See, I was actually thinking of I could be mistaken. The part about the witness.
The witness is typically, this is coming from the Medium post. The value being proven knowledge of is called the witness. So in our case,
so that would be
R,
the H,
right?
Or the R?
No, the value proving knowledge of. You're proving knowledge of R, aren't you?
Right.
Or really, I guess, yes, you want to prove that you know X, and you're gonna. That's actually the point. You want to prove that you know X, and you're gonna prove you know X by salting it with the value R, and then putting that value R in the right space to be able to do the computation. Then they're going to send you back a thing, and you're going to take the value R that you knew, or like you get, that's the salt that you added, and then you're going to take their challenge and you're going to multiply it by the value that you're trying to prove to them, the X, and then you're going to.
I think that is like the perfect description, James, because ultimately you'll have to come up with a different R for every verifier that you have, and so you can't prove the same R. Like, you can prove you know something, but if you just prove you know R, but everyone has a different R, what are you really proving?
Yeah.
But if you're salting X with R, then really what you're proving is your knowledge of X.
Yeah. Importantly, R and C both have to be different each time, because otherwise you could form a linear system of equations and re-derive R, or the first R that you used.
Yeah, very, very good point. You do want it to be, and this is why, like, I think we can gain advantage. I'm going to jump really far ahead for a second for everyone else. This is the property that Aaron just mentioned, that R and U and C have to be unique each time. I think we get to take advantage of in the zero knowledge context to form, like, to use the Fiat-Shamir heuristic, like, rigorously, because we can enforce that U and C are unique due to the DAG nature, to relying on the DAG nature of the underlying, like, state machine. And if we enforce the DAG nature, we can create unique proofs about the veracity of claims. And I believe we could, I don't know how to, I need more training to understand, like, how to make this statement. But I believe there's a type of protocol that we can define the soundness of by relying on that, like, DAG nature to create proofs about, like, computations that we wouldn't have been able to, like, that don't really normally create signatures, if that's a way to describe it, like, right? Because I can basically say I can create a signature out of just an opcode because I'm going to enforce that only this transaction is allowed to call this opcode like within this context. Yeah, I don't know the right way to say it. Anyway, I'm sorry, that was jumping really far ahead, but very good point, Aaron. And it's a very, very, very key, like crucial part to like actually doing these things in a sound way. Does this like last bit, like the fact that you're able to do this thing is and it works in the system is kind of particular to Schnorr, right? It's like this is just an example of like this process is called like the Schnorr protocol. It was patented. It was so revolutionary. It was patented, and people got pissed off because he patented like such a crucial like exchange of information. Like, way to be a jerk, in my opinion. Anyway, whatever. Anyway. Um, so but this process of being able to like prove something or like prove knowledge of this without revealing it in this like elliptic curve setting, this group where like this operation is possible, and therefore you can build this equality is a property of the setup of this like Schnorr thing of these groups of these things we're trying not to like get too into the weeds of. And so then maybe we can hop back over to Hans if you want to like.
Sure.
I don't remember the next thing on the agenda, but it does feel like a good segue to maybe step back or step forward or like say how they're used or something like that.
Sure. So that I guess there was just one more thing that I think we wanted to touch on, which is why are they called Sigma protocols? And this was something that you can see here. It's sort of interactive, right? You have a communication that goes from left to right, from the prover to the verifier. You have a communication going back from right to left, and then you have another communication going back. So it's sort of a back and forth communication that does this proving process, and that is like the sigma that you're representing.
Oh, it's a capital Sigma. Oh, now it makes sense.
At least I read that somewhere, or I heard that somewhere.
Yeah, it's a triangle. Like,
yeah, I mean there might be another explanation, but I don't know it. Anyway,
well, it's actually even really good because look, like the verifier could pick H and then send it to P. So that's the first top. Then you pick X. Then you pick R and you send U over. Then they pick C and you send it back. Then you compute Z and you send it over. So it actually is like a full sigma.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty cool. I like it. Let's go with it. We're just gonna make that the thing. If it's not, we're just gonna tell everybody it is.
Okay. Yeah. So anyway, what we wanted to do next was to move into what you can use these things to do. Or actually, did we want to talk about non-interactive Sigma protocols first?
I mean, maybe we can do the non-interactive version of the Schnorr and just like
Sure.
to set up the Sigma a little bit.
Sure. Okay.
It's just easier not to worry about like when you can look at the concrete example that it's just like, oh, look, do these things. Makes it easier.
Yeah. Let's see. Shall we do this one? Or did they have? Was there a?
I don't know. That's basically I can start writing it out if we want to, but maybe the first thing to do is talk about what is the Fiat-Shamir heuristic, like just at a high level, because I'm sure a lot of people don't or haven't even heard of it.
Okay. Well, before we do that, I just want to like share the core idea here behind what makes how we can make them non-interactive, regardless of what we're doing. Which is using hash functions. So remember how we generated that R, and then we used it to create our commitment T, and then we sent that T over. And then we got a challenge back. Well, if we didn't want to have it be interactive, right? If we wanted to have T, and then we wanted the verifier to be able to generate their own C in a secure way, we can do that using a hash function. And so by sharing T with the verifier can know what the challenge would have been by just hashing the commitment, and they can get C. Meanwhile, the prover also can get C without having to wait for the challenge to come back from the verifier. And the reason for that is because you can't really predict the output of a good hash function. So by feeding in your commitment, which you could, in theory, generate a crafted commitment, but you're not going to be able to generate a good challenge or a predictable challenge unless you are able to break the hash function itself. But I think, at least as to the best of my knowledge, most hash functions are still pretty secure. Most of the hash functions that are used in practice, at least. So that's the core idea. Is like, if we use hash functions, we can make things non-interactive. Okay, so I just wanted to get that out of the way. Okay, Fiat-Shamir heuristic.
I just want to point out that that is basically what the Fiat-Shamir heuristic says, is you can take any interactive protocol, use a hash function, and make it a non-interactive version. That's like the most general, maybe terribly blanket statement, but that's essentially what the Fiat-Shamir heuristic says. Any interactive protocol can be turned into a non-interactive protocol through this heuristic if you are fine with the assumptions like ingrained in making that random oracle like approximation or
okay. So it's like the formalized version of what I just said, basically, then.
Yep.
Okay.
At least that's how I understand it. I don't know, Aaron, if maybe you have a different take on. I did have a mistake. I point. It's not actually back and forth. I realized that X, because the prover has to send the commit. They have to make a commitment to X. That's actually what the G of X is. So I'm correcting myself from the previous slide. So my bad. I'm working this out. So Aaron, my bad. Go ahead.
So the challenge is replaced by a pseudorandom number that's just generated from the commitment. And then the idea is that it's unbiasable because, and you get a new random challenge each time because you're picking a random commitment each time. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So if this is sort of what we were doing before, we're still generating our little r in the same way. We're generating our commitment, which is called T, which is called U here, not T. We're generating our own challenge. So the prover is generating their own challenge based on the hash of these values. And again, this is sort of hard to predict. So the C is sort of randomly, you can think of C as being randomly generated. And that still allows them to generate the Z. And then they can send this UCZ tuple. So it's the commitment, the challenge, and the last part, which I forgot what we called. And that can be verified. And so given the G and the H, which they've sort of agreed on ahead of time, and the U, which is the first part of the tuple that they received, they can generate the challenge themselves. They can compute the GZ equals UHC because they have the C and the Z in the tuple, and they can validate that all matches. And there was only one message needed to be sent out by the prover instead of, this back and forth interactive thing.
Can I switch to my thing really quickly? Sorry, I'm
Yeah,
just trying
go
to.
for it.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm sorry. I know I'm basically just maybe just like writing it out helps me. So prove or verify, right? Same thing as last time. Basically the same thing, right? We still have, just like in the previous one, we had we both knew G, the prover had X and H, right? So G, X, H. And then you assume that there's, so this is actually kind of important. I would call this like your first commitment, right? I know within the protocol this is called the commitment, but what I'm realizing is that like U is kind of like a commitment to your salt. They already have the
Yes, that's
commitment to your
correct.
value. Like your commitment to your values is known by the verifier,
Yeah.
right?
Like if you're
They
operating with a
have
different G or a different H, well, if you're operating with a different G, then you'll get a different H, and then the whole
right,
thing's going to fall apart.
right. So we have to agree on this by construction, and then this is something that I posted, or like I made this. I figured this out at time t equals zero. Like this is time t equals 0. At time t equal 1, I do this. I get X, and I get my commitment to X, right? And I have to make those publicly available or something, right? Such that when the verifier wants to verify, they take my commitment to X, and they if they want to check it, they would have to be like, hey, prove to me that you know X. So that's like, I don't know, it's something that we don't, it's not part of this. It's like that acknowledgement of say, hey, prove it to me. We're just assuming that the prover does want to prove it, right? And that the verifier has some commitment they already have. Like that's what I just want to maybe come back to the original thing, saying that the verifier has the original commitment, and the prover is then trying to say, like, I still have this, right? I did this at some time, and then now at a later time, I will prove to you again that I still have it, like in this interactive version. And I feel like this, I'm making maybe this point because it helps later on. It's at least my understanding for like the more general approach. Because when you're saying I had this at some time in the past, and I still have it, right? Because this is the part that checks that you still have it, right? You first salt it so it's unique, so that this instance or this particular question of do you still have it needs to be unique so that it's safe, right? That's what Aaron was pointing out, is like that particular question of do you have X needs to be safe and like sound. And you can only do that if you make these unique every time. So this to answer this question of do you still have X, I can generate an R as the holder of X. I want to prove that I still have it. I generate an R like a salt, and I give it to the verifier, who then is like, great, thanks for like engaging my question. Here's my like number that I'll give to you, and now like use it to prove to me that you still have this thing. Like I have your first thing, that's what the R, that's what, like I have something that, or I'm sorry, like the verifier is like, I have something that helps me get R, that's this U thing. Sorry, I know and that's like the salt here. And then you use the C they gave you in like the second step, and then you can still prove that you know X, right? That's what ultimately you had in the beginning, that you committed to like way in the past. So then you compute this and you can send it over. Okay, so now though we want to be able to say I knew X, like I knew X then, and I'm going to be satisfied so in the zero knowledge sense, like the only way you can turn into a zero knowledge is to like change the question from an interactive protocol of you knew it then, do you still know it now, to a you knew it then, I'm going to assume you still know it now because you sufficiently proved to me beyond just the like computation of a point. You are able to then like agree on what a challenge point could be and construct that challenge point and also commit to it. So you formed this whole thing, and I can like run the verification protocol to like check that it all hangs together without. So I have. So in this one, remember the whole point was you have knowledge of X, but you ended up asking two questions. It was, do you have knowledge of X, and do you still have knowledge of X? Right. That was the two time portions of the protocol. And then this one is just like, just prove to me you had knowledge of X. And I don't care if you like prove to me you knew it. And I don't care if you actually like still know it. I just want to know that you knew it in a way that doesn't reveal it to me. Maybe that's like the way to think about the difference in the two protocols. Does that make sense to you guys? I was coming together as I was talking, really, is the problem.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of makes sense. I like that disambiguation of like the interactive protocol is like the, did you do it, and do you still have it? Like it's a time based thing versus this one is just like, prove to me you knew it well enough that you don't have to reveal it to me. Okay, so then I take let's see if I can figure out this part without actually looking at the notes. So in the end, I need to compute U, H, and C, right? That's what the verifier has to do. So you have U from this, you have C from this. I guess you could always check that, construct your own C. So like C prime is hash. You should know G because that's from the setup. You should know H because that's the commitment from time t equals 0. You should know pi from there.
U.
And no, pi. Oh, U. What am I talking about? I'm sorry. Yeah, my bad. U, which comes from pi. I don't know why I was looking up at the top. Okay, so I should be able to compute C prime, and like I should be able to compute my own C is what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So I can check, does C equal C prime? And if it does, okay, great. You agree to the same C that I would use. And then I check, does G to the Z, is it G to the Z? Yeah, I think it's G to the Z equal U to the H C, right? Is that the question?
Yep.
And I have everything. So, because I have the G. Let's see. I know I'm being pedantic. Let's see. I have G. I have Z because it came from pi. I have U because it came from pi. I have H because it's the commitment. Then I have C because I double checked it and we got the same thing and it's in pi. So this answers the question. You've proved to me that you know X and you didn't have to reveal X to me because we agreed on how to construct the challenge and what the group, like where we're going to do the operations in beforehand. And in this protocol, we only really agree on like the group here. We don't agree how the challenge is going to be formed. Okay, interesting. I don't know. Other questions on that, or?
Yeah, let's give the audience a minute or just a couple seconds to see if there are any questions about that before we move on.
I'm sorry if this is very boring for like the people who understand this. This is
my cryptography is quite rusty, so it's useful for me to just exercise it a bit.
What I love about this though is that you see that like it's really, really simple. Like to make it safe is not simple, right? To actually put it into the right security realms is not simple by any means. But the actual like underlying ideas are like, they're so simple sometimes. It's like remarkable how much these simple ideas, like how much value these simple ideas secure or like underlie our digital lives.
All right. I don't think we're going to get any questions on that. Did you want to move on to like some examples of Sigma protocols
Well,
or?
let's maybe talk about the Sigma Pro because all we did because we only talked about Schnorr and then we did Schnorr and the zero thing. So maybe
That's true. We only talked about like this specific instance.
right. I know we might just have to come back and start doing examples like
Another
I feel like
time.
if people have kept with us so far, maybe we've. Oh, do I need to stop my?
No, I can switch back.
Okay.
So this is sort of like the generic case of Sigma protocol. So you can see we don't, our H is gone and it's been replaced by Y, but it's not specified how that Y is derived. We still have our X, which is the thing that we're proving our knowledge of. But how we generate our commitment, how we generate the challenge, how we generate the response is all unspecified. So this right here is the generic framework of a Sigma protocol. So what we were looking at before was a Sigma protocol of Schnorr's algorithm or Schnorr's protocol, which uses the discrete log assumption. And just for those of you who are unfamiliar with the discrete log assumption, the discrete log assumption states that it's difficult to like invert an exponentiation.
So maybe I'm sorry, just to give like a little bit of intuition on discrete log, like the security of the discrete log, right? And I'm just curious if you guys agree with this idea. But you should think of, or one way that you can think how these when we talk about these groups, just think about numbers on a circle, right? Like you just have a circle and you just have numbers. Like so, anytime we talk about these groups, we're just talking about like a group mod like 10 yeah, like a group modulo some number, right? So like if you talk about, we can segment numbers into groups, right? We just say they're even numbers, they're odd numbers, right? So we can group them, but then we can define like groups of modulo so that, and that's what I mean by the circle, because if it's modulo something, then you only have like so many discrete states on the circle or discrete numbers on the circle. And then you start wrapping around again. You just keep going around in a circle. Okay. But what I want you to think about is like, that's only if you're looking dead on at the circle. Imagine you turn the circle sideways, and as you start at 0, you're here, but then you go around, and on modulo 1, you're at the next layer. Like so what we would call 0, because you're back to 0, I'm gonna like accumulate in like by going up the layers. And so technically any number could be represented modulo this group because you just put it on some higher layer as you go up, right? And essentially, the discrete log problem just says that it is really easy to be on a layer, like to know a number and to do multiplication with it, right? But it is very, very difficult to know the output of that multiplication and be able to know which layer it came from. Because multiplication, like the multiplication operation, kind of like gets rid of that information. It hides it. Right? Because the only like real, because multiplication just moves you from one point on the circle to another point on the circle, but you don't know which layer that you came from to do the multiplication. So just given a view of looking at the circle from the top and seeing a point on the circle, you don't know where the number came from, and it's very hard to like go backwards. So it's easy to do the multiplication, but it's very, very hard to like do the division, because the division involves like kind of picking that layer. And so you can brute force it. You can just try every layer, right? But we can make we can put enough that you can see in these protocols. We just like multiply the right series of numbers and add the things together. And it sufficiently obfuscates like knowledge of the number because of this like special property of like the heart, like being able to find this layer idea. And I know there's probably a better way to describe it, but that's like in my like picturesque brain, like I need a Lego model, like that's the picture I think of. It's actually a super useful picture from physics as well. Like we use this concept in physics as well. I don't want to go into that. That's kind of where this idea of phase accumulation. is why I think about it this way. So anyway, I'm sorry. I just think that's a really good way to like kind of generally understand why we say like discrete log is a useful like mathematical thing, because it literally is the underlying security principle for so like most of the internet. So it's a useful like picture to kind of just have an internal sense for what people mean by for it. I know I just wasted time doing it, but I feel like it's useful. Does anyone, I don't know, do you guys have a picture of discrete log, or like how would you describe what discrete log is?
For me, like I think it's like I don't necessarily need to have a mental picture of it, because if you just think about the numbers, like if you took 3 and you raised it to 950, or whatever, not 950, you shouldn't use that, but if you raised it to a large prime number, it's very intuitive how you would do that. Like you would just take the number and multiply it by 2 or 3 or whatever I said, I forgot. If you just multiplied it over and over again, the number of times that it was there, and then you had some big number at the end. But it's not at all obvious to me, if somebody gave you that big number, to figure out what the exponent was that got you there.
Okay. Yeah. I feel like similar ideas. Yeah.
Just because like people are used to doing exponents.
Yeah, it's easy for me to go up the layers and like to get to a layer, but it's very difficult for me to like when I'm looking like at an element within the group, that the elements within the group don't tell me the layer because I'm looking top down.
I see it. So like each step in the exponentiation is a step up the layer.
Yeah, like you just said, you take your number and you multiply it by each other by like that number of times.
Yeah, I didn't make the connection with the layers. The layers thing like totally went over my head.
No. Well, I know and it's a weird thing, but I'm just trying to say like that's what I mean. And it's not a perfect analogy, but I feel like it fits similarly. That you're just saying, oh well, because when I'm stepping up, I'm like kind of going up this ladder. Really, what you're doing is going around in increments of that, and that means you're slowly like more. It's not like one this way, but you're essentially doing the same thing. But when we give a point in the group, a point in the group is not side on like this. We don't get to tell like when we communicate points in the group. Right, the only points in the group are the circle, which we only see from like the top down. Like we only see the points in the group modulo. We don't get to see the like the phase accumulation, the like which layer it was on. So I don't know. It's very similar, I think. In like we have a similar intuition for. But I'm curious if Aaron, like what is your understanding of discrete log, or like why it's difficult?
It's difficult to factor large numbers, right? So that's the underlying principle. But visualizing these groups, you can do it in a number of ways. But yeah, I like the phase accumulation picture. I think of it as like a trapdoor operation because it's easy to generate the exponentiation, but it's like you identified, hard to get the generator that from a given result, right? Or the actual argument that was used to get to that result.
It's difficult to do the inverse.
Yeah, the inverse operation.
Before we close out, I wanted to just answer one question that we got from Sean that I thought was pretty interesting. Could you play rock, paper, scissors with a sigma protocol?
Yeah. Do you want to pull up so there's a coin flip game in the in the thing, right? So in the ergo script by example repo.
Okay. I'll pull that up. Hold on.
Yeah. And I think that the problem is just defining, like having the defining all the combinations. If you can define all the combinations of like which ones win in which, then yeah, I don't see why you couldn't. Because you just got to have the two people commit to their values. Like Alice would enter, she would commit to a value and hide it through a hash. Then Bob could see either take Alice's original token or enter his own token and make his own spend, then you have the two of them, and then you'd have to have a single transaction that would, well, you'd have to have a transaction where Alice revealed, and you have to have a transaction where Bob revealed. And then you'd have the exit transaction.
Yeah, because I feel like the prover, Alice, would know if they won as soon as they got the challenge, and then they would just, if they lost, they wouldn't send the Z back.
You know, Google Google GitHub or Ergo script by example.
Okay.
So many of the reason that we're following this, these I would say these Sigma protocol VMs have been pioneered by Ergo. I don't want to take any credit for this. Ergo is by far and away the brainchild. They've really, really pushed this register based Sigma VM idea very, very far, and I love it. It's a very great idea. I think they have the right idea to make a VM on chain that's more constrained like this. I just want to make it more accessible.
Is this what you were talking about?
The one I was looking at. So scroll down a little bit. Keep going to the code, to the actual code. Yep, down. Right. Keep going. Right there. This one. It's a game script. So this is the final script. This is the exit script. Remember I said you always write these scripts backwards. You always think about what's the final condition I want, and then what's the transaction to make that final condition, because the transaction to make that final condition has to satisfy the inputs to that transaction. And then once you have the inputs to that transaction, what's the transaction to make those inputs? It's easier to always make these things working backwards for anyone extended UTXO fans that are trying to learn. Anyway, this is the final game script, and what you just said, they're able to account for, Hans, if you read the comment, Sigma prop. After the end of the game, the second player wins by default. This prevents the first player to block the game by not revealing its answer. So exactly because Alice would know that she had lost, she would just not reveal her answer, and then Bob would claim by default. So I think we could do the same thing in that's why I was saying I think the way that they set up their heads and tails game, I think we could basically do the same thing with but the only part that I'm not sure about is this line right here. The val P win is the comparison of P2 choice, not P1 choice. I think that's the line of that's the service logic line. And if you could replace that line with your case handling for the different comparisons, and then I think you'd also want to, what I don't get, what they don't protect against in their script here seems to be that they assume, so the way they do the commits is that it's just a hash lock, right? So they assume that Alice and Bob are going to only have two values, like a 0 or 1. They're going to agree on on the pre-images, does that make sense when I say they agree on the pre-images? Right. Yeah. So I think I'm not sure. I could be wrong, and I'm not reading it correctly, because this is also kind of my Ergo script is quite difficult to wrap your head around as a when you're first coming to it, because doing the registers is just a little you gotta write anyway. So I haven't done enough studying, so I could be wrong. But like I said, I think that's the line, and so they agree on the pre-images. And so they don't, and if they agree on the pre-images, then they know what the, how to do, I think that would be how you have to do this. I don't know. I could be, like I said, I could be wrong about that. It doesn't make sense to me if they don't agree on the pre-images.
I think it's almost it's structured kind of like a rock, paper, scissors game that has two choices. So, player one chooses something, and then player two chooses something. And if they chose something different, then player one wins. And if they chose the same thing, then player two wins. And you can just think of it as sort of the player one says heads, player two flips it. If it is heads, then player one wins. And if it's not, then player one loses and player two wins.
Right. But in implicit in the statement you just said was that we agreed on heads and tails.
Yes.
Or really, we agreed on.
That's what I assumed you meant by pre-images.
Okay. No, exactly. Yeah. Okay. So we're saying the same thing. So we had to agree on at least heads, because yes, if I didn't say heads, than anything else, right? Because if you said heads and I didn't say heads, then whatever. But if I said whatever and you said heads, then whatever, right? But
Yeah.
so exactly that, and that's my point. Is like they don't seem to handle the case here of what happens if the pre-images don't, or like how do I force them to only use the pre-images I select? And which I don't know, maybe you just don't account for because it's a Sigma protocol and you can enforce that somewhere else. But I don't know, it's a gnarly thing. So short answer, Sean, yes, I think it is possible to do the heads and tails game. I think it's even possible to do like a rock paper scissors tournament. Maybe that could be like one of the first things we do in the Tetra. One of the Tetra test nets is a rock paper scissors tournament, a parallelized rock paper scissors tournament. Because they have the construction for how to do a parallelized heads and tails thing, so we can just generalize that to the rock paper scissors. And
I wonder if you could use the same concept to do like a tic-tac-toe game.
Yeah,
I think that would be harder.
Let's do it. Let's figure it out. I like it. Okay, but anyway,
we've sort of reached our time limit.
Yep.
Were there any other topics that we wanted to quickly say before we wrapped up?
I'm sure this is not the last time we'll be talking about Sigma protocols. That's it for me, though.
Okay, I guess that's gonna be it for our stream today. But tune in next time for whatever we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, thank you, Hans, and thank you, Aaron, for going through the like I said, nice load.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, I think we're supposed to do like an outro. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so thank you everyone for watching us today and being with us. If you want to find out more information, please feel free to go to the link tree at /Topl_protocol. I believe it's also where that QR code leads you. Check out a Discord, Twitter. I tweet a lot, probably more than I should. We got an awesome YouTube channel. Check out our code on GitHub. Look at our LinkedIn, Twitter, or Twitch. You can find us here next time. Other than that, I was done. Dang. See, look, I was trying to time it. Okay. Anyway, again, thanks everyone, and we'll catch y'all next time.